And I want to thank anybody for coming in and just being open to listening to this conversation, because it is a very controversial topic. Welcome to This Might Get Personal, where two life coaches, Nikhil and myself, Ashley, invite you into our unfiltered conversations. We're here to support others on their journeys while still walking our own, sharing the messy, the meaningful, and sometimes hilarious truths of growth and transformation. So grab a seat. This might just get personal.
Today we are getting really personal about therapy and coaching. Interesting. I always thought about therapy and coaching as side by side until I got into working in therapy and coaching. That's when I decided there is a lot more things we can discuss about therapy and coaching. So let's begin by knowing what do you mean by therapy? So what do you think therapy is?
Well, that's a great question. I think therapy is just kind of like, it's a very formal setting. It's very westernized, it's very clinical, it's very prescriptive, it's very scientific and like more logical, analytical brain, from what I would say. I mean, that being said, it's not a blanket statement as to what that is. Therapy can also be very therapeutic. It can be very Eastern. It can be very Eastern. It can be very abstract in lots of ways. But you and I both know that it can be very different from life coaching.
100%. This is where I agree with the definition. I think it can be a lot of the therapy, but where I deviate or where I find therapy is not as useful as it could be or is not used in a certain way. It deviates from the norm. I think, let me take an example. Like, for example, in my culture where I grew up in India, say, for example, my father, for example, will not appreciate anything about therapy because it feels as though it's an invasion of personal space, pride, whatnot, whatever you can say, we talked about ego a couple of sessions ago. I think that comes into play. There is this idea that it is not something you do if you are a well-organized person in the society, because you shouldn't have any mental problems because you're amazing. There's this feeling that therapy is only for the weak. It's only for the people who have neurodivergence or like people who are quote unquote crazy.
Sorry, I'm laughing right now because and you're so right. Keep going, please.
So it's not a problem, but I think what is happening is a lot of therapists who do amazing work have understood that, people are different and not just one size fits all comes into, like, there's many ways to get people to express themselves. The idea of therapy, I feel, has been lost. And I think it was to help people express themselves or like find ways themselves to cope with whatever it is that they're going through. And I think the idea is just now like there are so many modalities, so many ways, so many things you can intervene. Like there's a therapy for any life situation. It's like there's family therapy, there's group therapy, there's a lot of therapies. And what I felt like, going back to my dad, for example, he wouldn't accept therapy because for him it doesn't work. And there is this psychological thing where it doesn't work for him. And for years I've been battling that. I've been like trying to say like, no, it will work. Just give it a shot. And like, it's about finding the right therapist or it's finding the right person. And it's only recently I realized that there are people who are not like me. So not everybody has to go through exactly what I have to go through or what I have to teach. And that's when I realized, like, this person has their own way of managing things. Yeah, they might be struggling with certain things, but they've maybe found ways to cope with it. I'm not saying it is helping them or like they're not going through difficulties. I'm just saying they found ways to cope with it. And when you come in as a therapist, it kind of derails their own ideas, and it's very difficult for them to engage. So there's this intergenerational, there's a generation thing. Then there is this another thing which is in therapy, which is about boxing people. That's another big one. Like you put people into certain boxes, and that's not quite helpful. So yeah, there's a lot of things I can discuss. Let's get personal about therapy. And we'll also discuss what is coaching also. So as opposed to this example with my father, who I'm sure is listening to this podcast. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. But it's coaching, on the other hand, he's very open to. It's like skill-based. So if you want to learn something, go get coaching. Go to football coaching. Go to dance coaching or like training. Yes, that is kind of the idea of coaching. So there's this acceptance of coaching for skills, and therapy is kind of ignored because it's not something you can measure in the physical sense. It's something you measure through mental constructs. So that is where I think it is very difficult. So that's why I'm saying therapy is not for everyone.
Fair. Yeah. And that's, if I could expand on that, I mean, therapy and mental health and life coaching are just such taboo things. They're still taboo. I mean, therapy in itself is just coming out of its taboo era. And I think there's a lot to be said about that a lot of things have been taboo and just slowly become accepted. It's just a cultural thing that people are like, no, this is new, it's change, I reject it. And then eventually it just becomes normal and people accept it. And I think that we're just in that transition phase where people are just trying to find the balance in it. I mean, I wouldn't say that life coaching and therapy is fun, because in a lot of ways it's not fun. It's very uncomfortable. You have to really take a good look at yourself. You have to let other people really take a good look at you. And
let me ask you this question then. So are you saying therapy and life coaching synonymous together? Like, are you saying it's different, or because you use therapy and life coaching? So is both synonymous?
They can be. They're very similar in a lot of ways. I feel like in a lot of ways they can serve the same purpose. That being said, life coaching is a very vague term, because I mean, you can find a coach for everything. Like you said, you can get a basketball coach, you can get a dancing coach, you can get a mindset coach, you can get a meditation coach, you can get a postpartum depression coach, you can get a divorce coach. Like, it's a skill, right? And within that skill, there's different things. If you go to a dance teacher, she's going to teach you flexibility, agility, and skill in dancing. If you go to a divorce coach, they're going to teach you emotional resilience, hopefully ways to regulate your nervous system during stress, probably communication techniques. Like you said, they're all just really useful skills.
Okay, do you disagree with anything which I said?
I wouldn't say that I respect you, and I fully accept the fact that we're different people. We have different perspectives, different opinions. That's not right, wrong, or indifferent. It just is. I do agree that they're very different things, but I mostly agree on that because life coaching is just such a vague term left open to so much individual interpretation. And it's really hard. I mean, it's not even a regulated field. They're just starting to regulate it. They're just starting to put out certifications. And certifications still don't even matter in this day and age.
Oh,
which
yes.
is scary.
That is another thing we can get personal about, certifications. Oh, where do we get started? Yeah, interesting. Keep going.
But I think that there's a beautiful thing within that. It's like you don't have to be a doctor and have a PhD to have first aid knowledge, which I think everybody should have. And you don't have to go to school for 8 to 10 years of your life to be a good life coach.
Got it. Yes. Yeah, my take is also interesting. The reason I asked whether we disagree is like, I feel sometimes that therapists and coaches don't do as much work internally. And the reason I'm saying this is because I've met a lot of therapists, and I feel I've met a lot of in networking sessions and like in courses together, in one-to-one sessions. But I'm not saying like all of them represent the whole sample. I'm just saying there is this problem, I feel, is people go to these courses or therapist schools, let's call it therapist schools. I don't know what the technical term is, like, yeah, schools where they teach therapy. Mm-hmm. And they get this script, or they get this idea, they get this knowledge about certain modality like CBT, NLP. They get this idea of ACT, commitment therapy. They get this idea of mindfulness-based stuff. Mm-hmm. And they just bring it to everything. And without questioning why they are doing this, because they've been told that this is the structure, this is the way you should counsel people. I think people fall into that box and then just go through that. And I feel like I've tried to challenge myself, because I'm a mindfulness-based coach. I'm also saying, like, why mindfulness? Why am I still bucketing myself, saying mindfulness is the way out or way to process this thing? So like, as therapists, as coaches, I think we don't do enough work. And that's my biggest frustration with coaching and therapy. I think people have these wonderful skills. Like, we all have the documents, we all have the tools, the skills. Like, I'm sure all therapists have, all coaches have tons of documents or tons of spreadsheets and worksheets, all of that. And my question to them, have you used these worksheets? My question to myself is, have you used those worksheets? Have you engaged with it? Have you changed your mind? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about it in a different angle? And the answer comes back as no. And I haven't. And that's where I feel like, if we are to help people, I think we have to help them where they are at. And instead of helping, so for us to help them where they are at, we have to let go of these ways in which we learn things, or we are certified, etc. So that's where I get it. It's not a registered field. Even therapy is not a regulated. You can call yourself a therapist if you help people. It's okay, but you cannot call yourself a psychiatrist. But you can call yourself a psychologist, if I am not mistaken. But it's very, yeah. So my point is, I think we don't do as much inner work as we promote. We promote this all the way, and I don't believe that. Most of them do, but a lot of them don't do this inner work.
You mean life coaches or therapists, or both?
Both. Both. I think life coaching is, I think we'll come to life coaching, but therapists more I was talking about. Life coaching is different because, as you say, there's many coaches many specific skills. So you just need to be specific at this particular thing. So if people are coming to me for fitness advice, I don't need to talk to them about therapy or like their childhood traumas, etc. I just need to help them where they're at, which is they want a nutritional plan. They just want something. So yeah, coaching is different, but I'm talking about therapists, really more to therapists. This is targeted to therapists. So if therapists are listening, please feel free to comment. Please feel free to get angry.
That's such an interesting thing that you said, because I work with therapists as well for life coaching, and I have also watched a lot of reels lately. Actually, one of my clients just released a really good reel that I love, that she was like, just being authentic and vulnerable, what she is, and said, we as therapists don't do the work. We tell people to journal and we don't journal. We tell people to do breath work and we don't do breath work. We tell people to hold boundaries, and here we are working 12-hour days, seeing 10 clients, saying, yes, I can take you on the weekend. And she was like, we need a change. And I think that that's just prevalent in all industries. But of course, in mental health, it's such a big topic because, you have to practice what you preach. And I think that just separates the doers and the sayers. And you can tell just by being around somebody, by having a conversation with them, listening to this podcast, they're like, oh, this person kind of knows what they're talking about. Or at least they're one step ahead of me. I would like to work with that person. And I think that that's the most important thing, because if you're dealing with somebody with just a closed mindset that thinks that they know everything, but they're not showing up as the example of a person that we would like to emulate, that I would like to emulate, that I'm not going to work with that person. And there's so many different degrees to that. And I don't think it's so important that this person is super enlightened, that has all of their shit figured out, because we are people. There is not one person on this earth, including the Dalai Lama himself, that is just that's perfect, that is without flaw. And I think it's super important to bring that authenticity and vulnerability into the space so that people can be validated just by people being themselves and admitting it, being like, I fucked up, and modeling, okay, how do you have that difficult conversation? How do you move forward from that? Yeah. And
that is so true. I think what you said about one step ahead of people, that is the crux of coaching, not the crux of therapy, I think, but the crux of coaching. I think that is why I think people follow people, is because they're just like, literally, you're following people because they are one step ahead of you. If you literally walk, it's like you're following somebody, they're one step ahead of you. So that is coaching. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think everybody messes up. So true. I think, there's been so many things about the Dalai Lama also. And like a lot of us have so many shadows and things we don't want to talk about, or things we don't feel like we can talk about, or things we are ashamed of. And yet, I think we turn up and we show up and like we understand it for ourselves. And in understanding it for ourselves, we have some level of agency to spread it with someone else. Like this is the essence. Like I don't need to know everything about the human body to be a doctor. Think about this. Like most doctors don't know everything about the human body.
Absolutely not. Just in their specialty.
Specialty. Exactly. And we treat them as doctors, and whenever they say something, we're like, okay, they're just one step ahead of you. Okay, they did 5 more steps, which is 5 years of med school, which is it's a bit difficult. I wouldn't want anybody to go through that again. But after achieving all that, they still don't know the understanding of how nutrition impacts mental health. They might not understand certain things. This is not a dig at doctors. Doctors do wonderful jobs. They help people, they transform people, they change people. This is not a dig. I'm just saying, this is a reinforcement of people who may be stuck, feeling, oh, what value can I add? There is value in whatever it is that you have done, is my point. It's like, you don't need to know everything about everything. If you know how to play the E chord on a guitar, you are valuable. If you know how to play a sport, which some people don't know how to play, that is valuable. If you know how to sing lyrics about a song, you are valuable. So the point I'm trying to come back to is, just have to be one step ahead. And that's where it's value. So like for coaches who may be listening to this, just be patient, just be knowing that whatever you're doing is worth it. And for people who are seeking some sort of validation that they're on the right track, you're on the right track. Everybody messes up. It's okay. But coming back to therapy, it may not be right. It may not be right for you. May be right for you, but you have to try it. That is what I wanted to say. And okay, now let's. I have a question for you. Why do you think people pick a coach, life coach? This is coming back to what we do. Why do you think people pick a life coach?
Well, I can tell you why I picked a life coach. I was in therapy, in and out of therapy, for various reasons going through my divorce. I've also been sexually assaulted. I also have a lot of things going on in my family. I've also been physically assaulted. And I wanted somebody to really be able to listen to me and help me process that. Because most people just don't have the skills to be able to do that. It's not their fault. They never learned. It's just they don't. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't have basic listening skills. They always want to fix the problem. They don't feel comfortable with the emotions that you're bringing up. They immediately want you to feel better. But people have to feel the pain to move through it. You can't just jump to the other side. And it is best done in a safe environment with a safe, loving, kind person that hopefully has walked the path before, so they understand, and they can help you navigate it. But I had been in therapy, and he was a great listener. He was a fantastic therapist. But then I had done a life coaching workshop, and I thought, because I'm a very analytical person, I was like, this is more efficient. Mm-hmm. This is much more efficient. This teaches me more skills. I'm not just talking and slowly processing things. And I know that in myself, I'm a strong enough person to be able to get to the edges of my experiences. Edge meaning pushing myself to the very brink of my discomfort and standing there until I find the lesson in it, the comfort in it, and then my edges expand. And I expand as a person, and I become comfortable with experiences that used to be uncomfortable. And I learn more about myself in that process. Mm-hmm. So that being said, there are plenty of therapists and plenty of life coaches and plenty of experiences like plant medicine that can push you over the edge. So like finding people that you intuitively, finding a person that I felt intuitively safe with was like led me to my biggest breakthroughs. And my life coach is amazing, and I can only say good things about her. And from my client perspective, for instance, like I found it super interesting that a brilliant therapist, I think she's brilliant, is working with me. And I had to ask her the same. I was like, in our first meeting together, when you decide, does this person want to work with me? Do I want to work with this person? Are we a good match? Do I feel like I can support you in what you're looking for? So in that first conversation, I just told her, I was like, there's going to be a lot of points where you know more on the psychology side than I do. What makes you feel like you can get something out of this, or what are you looking for? And she was very honest with me, and she said, I just lost faith in the therapy community, and I'm looking to try something different, and I feel safe with you. And that's what's important to me. And honestly, that was the basic pull for me to also go to a life coach. That and wanting to go deeper. I don't feel like therapy was meeting me at the depth that I wanted to jump into.
Fascinating.
And you? I would love to know, what is your experience with therapy and life coaching?
Oh, I have strong opinions about therapy, but actually it helped me. So it's a weird one. I think it's only, I went through therapy because of my, the underlying issues which started to come up during working for corporate world for about 16 years, which was unaddressed, and it was underlying. It was festering, it was bubbling, it was simmering. And I don't like to use that term of I broke down. And it kind of felt like breaking down, but it's not really, because I was living the life as normal as anybody would see it, as normal as it could be. Normal in air quotes if people didn't see what I'm doing. But something didn't feel good inside me. I was addictions like anxiety, depression, all of that undiagnosed. So it was literally consuming me without me realizing what it was. And then I had to find a way. And the first thing we do whenever we get stuck, what do? We go search. Not inward, we go search outward. We take our laptop, we take a laptop out and we say, we pop up that schmoogle screen. And then we just say, how can I reduce my anxiety? And then question mark. And a lot of suggestions came up. And one of the suggestions was, you should try this mindfulness-based stress reduction stuff. And I read about it before, occasionally, because that's what I do. It's I just read a lot of non-fiction self-help stuff. And I was reading it and I was like, yeah, this makes sense. So mindfulness came to my life at that right time. And I went to my first ever practice or first ever session, and I was so skeptical. I was like, all of this is nonsense. Why just sitting here and breathing will change my life? I'm like, wow, okay, this is too good to be true. But I spent 300 pounds. I was like, okay, sunk cost.
I have to do it now.
I have to do it now. And I was like, 300 pounds for somebody telling me. So first, that was the mentality I was going into this first session. I go in the first session, they're like, yeah, this is mindfulness. It's just blah, 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 blah. Nothing, I didn't understand anything. They said mindfulness. And they did this exercise of just noticing your breath and the body. So body scan. So something, a smaller version of a body scan where you just notice different parts of your body. And at one point I was like, what? So you just basically say that whenever you notice your mind is not on something, you just bring it back. You can do that? Interesting.
Mind blowing.
It's mind blowing. Yeah. I was like, oh, so I can bring it back. I don't need to just hang around in that thought loop. I have a little bit of agency. That was the first session, and I was like surprised. I was like shocked. I was like, oh, it didn't change me as a person overnight or anything. It just, as you say, it just clicked. Boom. Oh, I can bring my mind back. That idea alone, I can bring my mind back to whatever it is that I'm doing. That idea alone changed me. So then I was like, oh, okay, fine, I'll hang around for 8 weeks. It kind of makes sense. Let's see what else they've got. And then I did the 8-week course, and that kind of helped me learn new skills. I went and started to practice them, and it started to feel better. I was like, oh, I am not getting as anxious. I'm not getting as triggered. I'm not getting as impatient as previously. My wife started to say like, what are you doing? What are you taking? Are you drunk? Because usually when I was drunk, that's when I was more calm. So some weird reason. So like my drunkenness was, I would get drunk, but I'll get more and more in tune with myself. I'll get more and more aware of myself. Like lots of people lose their awareness. I actually, until I get like, okay, a level after, then there's no turning back. But in the drunken phase, like up to my tolerance limit, I would be so like into people. And I was like, oh, yes, I will listen. I am completely listening. I don't know what they're saying, but I feel like I'm listening. And that was the kind of person I was. So like my wife was like, are you drunk? No.
What are you taking?
What are you taking?
Yeah.
And that is where it flipped. It's like, it's not that I needed alcohol. It was just that I needed my awareness. And this is not, we're talking about therapy. This is nothing to do to therapy. It's nothing. It's like just an exercise. We did a mindfulness-based exercise. And then after that 8-week session, I still had all the proclivities. I still was doing a lot of alcohol and like still kind of anxious, depression. All of that was still hanging around. It didn't change. But the attitude changed. And I was like, I walked out of that and said, I want to be a mindfulness meditation teacher. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Because this is so powerful. I think people should know about this. And then that started my journey. And then all of that brought me to therapy. So like, then one day I was like, okay, I need help with my anxious thoughts. I need help with finding ways to cope with my addiction. I need help with this. So all of that started after just bringing awareness to yourself, to myself. And so then I approached the therapist. Then I was like, okay, I work with therapist. And then she was very helpful. She understood. She listened. All good. And then after a while, it was not helpful. After a while, I became attached to this therapist. I was like, oh, now it's just, now it's just someone I can just go feel happy about. And that's when I realized, see, again, this is all awareness from mindfulness, which helped me to notice these things. I was like, okay, now I'm not, of course it's helping, but it's not helping in the way I intended to. So I think it's time for change. And then that's when I approached a coach on like business stuff. Like, how do I get a business up again? And then I approached another coach about like mental health and stuff. So a lot of things helped me in my journey. But just to cut the long story into short bit is that moment of knowing where your awareness is changed me. Knowing where your thoughts are right now just changed me. So yeah, I think for me therapy works if you are aware of therapy. If you are aware that you need therapy, not because everyone else is doing it, which is what kind of therapy has become now, is like, oh, yeah, everybody is going, so I should go. Maybe I'll get some. It should come from within. You should feel that necessity or that move or that push, until then, don't do therapy.
Yeah, because anybody can sit in that chair and say whatever they want, but unless you're genuinely seeking to improve yourself and coming in with a growth mindset, you're just paying a bunch of money for nothing. And it's the same for life coaching. I won't work with people that are not coachable because it's just a waste of my time and their money. And, it's not worth it.
100%. 100%. And that awareness is the most important thing. As people who may be considering therapy and coaching, just ask this question to yourself, like, what is it that you are looking for? Is it that you're looking for someone to help you in a certain specific skill? Then yes, go for coaching. If it is something you want to work off your past or something you feel like you're stuck with, seek out help. If it's something you want to just get it off your chest and like really just want someone to be there to passively listen and like help you kind of make sense, seek therapist, and it should come from within. And that is what it is. It's so we started this conversation about therapists and coaching. My take on it is therapists have a lot they can do to help this narrative. Coaches have a lot to help this narrative. The narrative I'm talking about is don't jump into therapy unless you really are aware of it, or unless you become really aware of it. So I can be guilty sometimes. Sometimes I take on a client and I'm like, they're ready because they are ready to pay, versus they are ready emotionally. They're ready emotionally. And
coachable. Are they coachable?
As you say, coachable. Yeah. It's a challenge, but if people are ready to invest, it's kind of a signal. But again, there are some people who I am working with, who are just, I feel like they are doing the same thing I was doing to my therapist. It's like emotional support. It's like someone to speak to, as opposed to growth and like transformation, which is what my coaching philosophy is. Like, you can start anywhere and like grow. So you don't have to you don't have to solve all your problems here. You can work on what is it that you want to work on.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because I feel like that's so important to say. The first step is being really willing to open yourself up to being heard and sharing your thoughts with other people. From there is potential to move forward. But like, that being said, if somebody is coming with a closed mindset and saying, I'm just paying you to listen to me, I don't want your advice, I don't want your perspective, I don't want to change my opinion, that is a form of emotional abuse. So I am not available for emotional abuse. I don't think, like, I know therapists that stop working with clients for that reason, because it's not helpful. It's not supportive to anybody. But if somebody comes to me and is willing to just even slowly start opening up their life, their fears, their dreams, their vulnerabilities, their experiences with me, that trust is foundational and essential. I'm not expecting somebody to go into some sort of deep inner childhood exercise about their biggest traumas with me within the first month, or even the first 3 months if they're not ready. It's just that there's progress being had. Because if there is no progress, or if there is kind of emotional abuse, then it's just not a healthy situation for anybody.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think that is really important. Emotional, it's just really emotional abuse, as you say. Yeah, totally.
So final thoughts?
Yeah, let's do this. So we got really personal about therapists and coaches. It is coming from a place of growth and transformation in mind. I think we as coaches and therapists, we can do a lot to help people. And this is our job to help ourselves also. And I think for a lot of us, start to do a little bit more of the practices which we wholeheartedly recommend to all our clients. Start doing those. Start talking openly, authentically, and honestly about this. I think this is where it is. So therapists and coaches have a wonderful opportunity to help so many people. More so than, I think people are nowadays using more therapy and coaching than actually going to doctors.
Ooh, that's a big statement.
I have a feeling this could be like challenged by all of them. But I think like even me nowadays, if I'm feeling upset about some emotional thing, I'm not going to my doctor, I'm going to my therapist, who might not be a doctor.
Yeah.
So, or a coach who is clearly maybe a doctor, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe doctorate in philosophy, but that's not the same doctor. But yeah, so yeah, use your tools, use your own tools on yourself. I mean, that sounds a bit interesting, but yeah, just.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like one of my favorite techniques, which I think is so undervalued, is like emotional release writing, which is a form of journaling, but it's a little bit more direct and guided. And I was sharing it with somebody, and the first question they asked me was, well, do you do it yourself? And I was like, yes, I do. And I love it. And that's why I wholeheartedly recommend it. And I think there's just so much behind that question, because they are aware that people recommend things and do not do them themselves, because it's that common. And I love that you're saying that, and I love that you're inviting people to practice what they preach, because it's so needed.
Yeah, and coming back full circle in where we started is, I was talking about my father and how he didn't want a therapist. That doesn't have to be everyone. And just because he might have had that experience doesn't mean that you will have that experience. It is not about one person signifies the whole demographic. It is just it's very personal. As we talk about in this podcast, it's very personal. We get really personal here, but the point I was trying to make in invoking that story is, yeah, therapy might not be for everyone, but it helps. Coaching might not be for everything, but it helps build some skill, something which you want to work on. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Love it. Love it. And I want to thank anybody for coming in and just being open to listening to this conversation, because it is a very controversial topic. And I would genuinely love to read whatever anybody has. Questions, comments, suggestions in the comments. Feedback is always welcome. And just thank you for being a part of this space and coming here. You guys are our friends, our family. Just love having people here to be able to share the conversation with. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley, for your openness in discussing all this. This is amazing.
Thank you,
Keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. This is getting more and more personal.
Yes. Even more on the next one.
Thank you. Cheers.
Ciao.